Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to EternalJourney, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to EternalJourney, the podcast.
Greetings, all my knights and punta ones out there. You are listening to EternalJourney, the podcast that talks about all things Eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and you are joining us for episode 111. We're just going to be kind of doing a bit of a check-in on the current Revelations draft format, see some of the points that we've gathered and stipulations that we try to follow and whatnot. But first, joining me on the line are my good friends. Calling in from one side of the world, we have Darth Herman 2, aka Alex. What is up, my friend?
Hey, what's up, fellas? Miss you guys. Been a while.
Definitely has been, man. Good to hear your voice, my friend. Good to hear your voice. On the other side of the universe and internet is one of our, well, I don't know if we can call you a resident best player, man. Alex has been throwing up some serious day twos here in Constructed, but you do have the deepest finish in a open currently is John Holio. What's up, buddy?
Yo, hey guys. So happy to be here. It's been way too long. IRL has been jamming us up something fierce.
Yeah, no joke. Now we're across all kinds of time zones and whatnot now, being adulting and all the things.
Yeah.
So real quick, before we sidetrack, it has been a while, so I wanted to do a quick, I kind of mentioned it, but I want to give you guys a quick shout out, man. I do want to give a general shout out to the entire EternalJourney team. They've been throwing up some really serious, great day twos. How have we been doing on the fantasy league, John? I know it's hard to track because we only have one team and not everyone's on it. So sometimes someone that goes deep in the tournament isn't on our team; they're on the bench. How have we been doing on that? I think we're 3-2 right now, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think we're overperforming from my expectations. Like we've had some tough matchups that we've won, and like you mentioned, like some of the ones we lose, it's because we just kind of picked the wrong players for the roster that weekend or whatever. Because our teams is just doing great this year.
Yeah. So shout out to Friends of Eternal for hosting that fantasy league. If you guys want to find out more about it, I'm not gonna pretend I know everything about it. Just check it out there on their Discord. But yeah, shout out to the rest of EternalJourney, IP Longno, Alexandros Gray, Alex Fierro, Robo Jellyfish, I want to say Soap Yellow, but it's not Soap Yellow. Help me out. Who am I missing?
Oh, we got Ash,
Always Face,
Dizzy,
Ash, Always Face, Dizzy. Wait, hold on. He's done well. I just haven't caught him in voice yet.
There's Guo
Leo the Plu.
Yeah, Leo's our most
Pluridon?
recent addition.
And then Gohei. There you go. I'm thinking
Gohei
Gohei was the one.
Storm.
Yeah.
Gunner.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Gunner. Oh yeah. Gunner did well too. Yeah. That's
helped
right.
us so much with the draft tournament prep.
right?
Yeah. Anyways, they're a great group of guys who've been kicking it in voice and, doing the team thing. It's been a lot of fun. So I just want to give those guys a shout out for doing some great stuff.
Alex Fierro as well. I think that's the only other active one we missed. Oh,
yeah.
You got him?
No, I said both. I threw out both Alex's. All three, I guess, now. So that makes voice interesting to say the least. And then, of course, you two guys, John, man, tell us a little bit real quick. I mean, I don't think they mind if this episode goes a little long. It's par for course. So, man, tell us a little bit about your most recent day two, man. You did great, dude.
Yeah. So that was, what was that? It was the Expedition tournament. Yeah, that's right. Gosh, it was already kind of so long ago. Didn't quite get there for the draft tournament, unfortunately. But the Expedition one, I think we had like 5 or 6 decks that different members of our team took, and I ended up taking like a Feln deck, and I made some like changes the day of or whatever to it, but we've kind of been running something like it on ladder, and it was doing well. And I mean, all these decks were basically doing just as good, so it was kind of like a preference thing we basically decided. And I always start my run late into Saturday, so I kind of have a little more knowledge about the tournament meta before I joined, and I don't know, I just was feeling the Felm deck. I just enjoyed the way it played and stuff. Yeah, and it served me well. Mine was way more mid range than all the other ones I was seeing. I was, playing a lot of chunky fours, and not just relying on my Davias. In fact, I was only running 2 Davias in the deck. And then I was the card Ulixa was overperforming. I think most of the film decks weren't running that because it's like a non-bow with Davia. But with only 2 in the deck, it was a non-issue. In fact, the number of times I just slammed it out there with a Davia in my hand, like forgetting about it or basically not caring, was very high. Like I transformed a good number of Davias, and honestly, like the cards they were randomly turning into were usually pretty decent anyway. So yeah, it never really messed me up. The deck did great.
Yeah. Of course, though, that also messes up their Davias and their what's the other high cost spell that they run? I'm drawing a blank now, but I know it's hit a couple things. Yeah, I thought it was great tech. I enjoyed the deck. I didn't play in that tournament. I just wasn't quite feeling it, and life and whatnot. But yeah, that was great. Congratulations to you and IP Longno. I think we had 5 members of EternalJourney make day 2.
That sounds right.
Longno having the deepest run, making top 4 or missing top 4, making top 8.
Yeah, I think he just missed top 4 if I'm remembering correctly.
Gotcha.
Wait, no. Actually, I think I made it the farthest on the expedition one. He was like getting the farthest in the draft open.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what it was. That's what it was. Yep. Draft open. I ended up doing 3 out of the 4 drafts. I had 2. I had a good run, an okay run, and then a not so good run. And the not so good run kind of screwed me over. I was right on the wire for the last draft, and I needed to go 6-1, and I just wasn't feeling it. So I didn't want to add that stress. I'd already been streaming for 4 hours, so I figured I'd take a back seat. And so yeah, that was me. I didn't play in the expedition. Did the draft one. I had a lot of fun though. I will say this, not to toot my own horn because it was 100% luck, but I have to throw the game up on YouTube. I will. I may put the link to it in the show notes, but you guys have to check out this game against Lights Out Ace. It was absolutely amazing. I completely sacked out. I'm not gonna lie. I had no skill involved whatsoever. Lights Out Ace played a phenomenal game, but holy cow, did I have me and the rest of Twitch on the edge of our seats. I know you saw the VOD to it, right, John?
Oh yeah, and like people were linking that clip all over Discords. Like I think I first saw mention of it on the Friends of Eternal Discord. I was like, I gotta see this. Yeah,
no kidding.
Everyone was loving that. It was hilarious.
Nice. I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys. So you guys can go check it out. But I definitely won a game that I 100% should have lost. It was pretty amazing. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it was so good. Y'all gotta see that if you haven't.
Yeah, and that's one of the few benefits of like not conceding early, right? Is that you have those you can have those comeback moments that if you're just like, all right, I'm dead, and you concede early. You just don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and that was the kind of thing where even if I had my deck list in front of me, I don't know if I would have noticed that out, and I may have conceded. It's like, well, I have no outs, so I'm out of here. But nope, there's,
So
you never know.
I tell people all the time. Granted, I will admit that I run games a little bit longer when I'm streaming than I would on my own, right? On my own, I'm kind of like, all right, we're done here. Let's move on. But on stream, you kind of got to wear it out and plus I also like to let people do their thing, right? If they have a cool combo or something, I guess some people are okay with just like, hey, I'm showing you the out. I like go ahead and concede, but other people want to actually do the cool thing.
Yeah.
So I let people do it. And it just so happened that time it worked out in my favor. But, anyways, moving on to you, Alex. Alex, man, you taking aggro decks, Maverick aggro decks into these opens and just freaking slamming into day 2, bro. Like, congratulations, man. You've been doing pretty well yourself.
Yeah, it's funny we're on a limited podcast, but I've been doing okay at the constructed events and totally tanking out of the draft ones, but it is what it is. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I kind of poach one of the team members' decks, and I play when John plays, so you get good tiebreakers, and I just try to play good, and pretty much getting super lucky. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, you're also good at aggro decks, right? And aggro decks have the ability that archetype inherently is able to steal wins if your opponent stumbles, right? So you're going to get some free wins where they kept a sketchy hand or they're missing an influence and you're just like, slam, you're dead.
Absolutely, and that's like the best type of deck to play when you're on a time crunch because the games are fast. You know, you don't, if you're like coming up against the clock towards the end of the tournament time, you don't want to be running out of time. That's like the worst way to not make a day 2 or whatever. So yeah, I just like last time I picked Goy's Stone Scar aggro deck. He had made day 2. Unfortunately, we got paired in round 1. I was kind of crappy about it, so we had to team kill each other there. But yeah, super gracious about it, and it was a lot of fun. Those aggro decks are fun for me. I just like turning the units sideways and, you know, bashing face. Games are fast, win or lose.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that is the thing. I don't know if that happens to other teams. I obviously don't pay attention to other teams' lineups and whatnot, but I feel like every tournament there's at least one weak team kill somebody in day 2. It feels like every single tournament. I think this last one we avoided killing people in the top 64, but then people were matched up in the top 32. It was like, man, we're already trying to get there. Like the last thing we need to do is just to guarantee one of us doesn't, you know?
That means a lot of us did well, I guess. So it's like a good problem to have, you know. But yeah, yep. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Barbarian Camp runs into that. I feel like they have some of the most consistent. I always forget who's on the team. Like I said, I'm not really paying attention. Like I see the names when I'm looking at the brackets, but I'm not like, oh yeah, that person's on such and such a team. You know what I mean?
It tends to happen in like the later rounds more because they're pretty.
Oh
good.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I mean, I think in the draft tournament a few weeks ago, like they literally had all 10 of their fantasy players make day 2, if I remember correctly. And I think there was definitely some team kills.
Yeah,
unavoidable.
With that many people, you can't avoid it.
Yeah. The other thing I will say about the draft opens too, just once again, not making excuses, just an observation I've seen is that it is unique because they normally change up the format a bit right before it. And then you also get a plethora of people that don't typically draft to come in. And granted, I mean, good players are good players regardless, right? We've seen plenty of constructed players come out of nowhere and then just, you know, do extremely well in the draft opens because they're just good players. You know, they maybe listen to a couple of podcasts, talk to some people on their discords and figure it out. Plus, you know, every team has a handful of drafters on there to kind of reference. But I think that it's not clear cut because, you know, you're sitting there kind of sticking to your guns and what you know, and that may not necessarily pan out in the draft format, whether it's in the drafting or in the deck building, right? Like there was one draft that I did where I was just lost the entire draft. I'm like, what is going on right now? You know, You're seeing cards that you're like, I should not be seeing this card 7th pick, or like, I thought this was open. Why is this in the pack? And where'd the other cards go? And, you know, or someone that I can't remember. I think it was in the draft open where I just lost to a straight up bad deck. And once again, not judging my opponent. I'm just coming from a place where we've talked about it and we're like, we've identified that, yeah, this card's bad. This card's bad. You shouldn't be playing this card. Why? And I totally got smoked by the deck. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the thing that happened. So
yeah,
I spectated. Sorry, go for it.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I spectated. I think Gunner's first game on his day 1 run, and like he went up against so many cards that I have never seen played in draft. It was like some opponent on a mono time deck, and like, you know, Gunner even got to play his Behold at one point and just still did not win the game. It was kind of hilarious.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that would have tilted a lot of people off the face of the earth. Losing that game was like, you know, so many bad cards were played, and yet here we are.
Yeah, I had a deck that had Waxing Moon in it, so I waited, you know, until I had the right spot. I had a board, things lined up. I'm like, cool, all right, let's drop Waxing Moon. And then literally my opponent refreshes their power and then hits me with, what is it, Melt Metal or whatever, the 0 cost slow spell that just destroys a relic, doesn't do anything else. I was like, who main decks that? Like, what?
Yeah, main deck slags. I hear you, man.
I was just well, at least Slag can like burn a Sentinel and his fast speed, right? So there's a slight application for that, but it was literally the 0 cost. Yeah, Meltdown, thank you. That was it. Yeah, literally, 0 cost spell that just destroys a relic. Not even a relic, weapon relic. I think it's literally just well, I guess it is but yeah, I was just like, what? I didn't kill anything. I didn't get to draw a card off my rare. Like, he just had. I was like, okay, well, that just happened. So yeah, it's all good, man.
That's why we like
think
draft.
yeah, and exactly, right? Every day, every dog has its day in draft, and that's the fun part about it, for sure.
Well, you're saying like Direwolf also did the gem sale for draft tickets like the week before, so there was a lot of draft action before. A lot of people got their practice in, so it's not like they're completely newbies to the format. They get a chance to practice, so that makes for a good field. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely felt like a lot of the streamers, the draft streamers, were talking about how much, how quick the queue times were and how many more people they could play against versus the same 30 people or whatnot.
Yeah, I'll also say like it wasn't perfect, but it was like such a huge improvement as far as like the packs and not getting just bot drafted out of your mind. Like it's like pretty reasonable packs as far as that goes this time. So they did a good job addressing those issues from the last draft tournament for sure.
Yes, so good job, Direwolf. And then while we're on the subject of Direwolf, real quick, shout out to P. Sully for coming back. I personally didn't realize he left, to be honest with you. I just thought he was behind the scenes, but I guess he did go on hiatus for some reason. But I really enjoy his commentary. I enjoyed him with Star City Games, and I like that he's commentating here because he's just a really knowledgeable person, and he's funny too. So it's good to have him back.
I've been seeing him on Ladder again too.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
So
you always love to see the devs playing the game.
Oh yeah, for sure, most definitely. I'm sure they're just testing stuff out. I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Because it's a fun game. I'm sure I'd appreciate them playing it just for funsies, but at the same time, something kind of changes when you do it for work. So, but yeah, all right. I think that's gonna cover it. For just intros. It's good kicking it with you guys. Real quick, I do want to give some shout outs to some people still supporting the stream and whatnot. Really appreciate you guys. So I'm Meadow, Great Good Manda, Chastity Weaver, I'm So Bad, Sizzle Steam, Karga, Wolvie, and Scarlet Harlot. Thank you guys so much for supporting the stream and being part of Jedi Order. Really do appreciate you guys. It's part of the reason why I keep, at the very least, streaming on the weekends, because I enjoy you guys. It's great to kick it with my friends. It's a good release from my week, and we get to have a lot of fun, even if I am absolutely terrible of this format, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. But with that, let's go ahead and dive right into our pack one, pick one. Let me brush the dirt off of the dust off of this pack and see what we got going on here. Throw it up on screen for those watching on YouTube. There we go. You guys can see that. All right, excellent. So, Alex, we'll send it over to you for the commons. Commons, we have Rune of Relocation. This is gain a time influence power. It is depleted unless you have played a sigil this game, which is fairly easy to do in limited. And then amplify 5, play teleport, which simply bounces a unit, could be yours or your opponent's, back into the owner's hand. It is a cycle of power that we've seen in this format, which are the runes. Each color gets one that does essentially the same thing, gives you an influence of that color, not requiring you to have influence of that color, and then is depleted unless you've played a sigil this game, which once again limited. You're mostly playing sigils anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Next up, we have Blitzstone. This is a 2 fire relic. Summon, deal 2 damage to an enemy unit. And then when you play a unit, and you are forced to, sacrifice Blitzstone to give it +1 attack and charge this turn. Next up, we have Boiling Geyser. This is a 1 primal fastball. Deal 3 damage to an enemy unit that was played this turn. I still am not a fan of this card. I feel like my opponent always has it on turn 1 or 2, and I always have it on turn 8. But it is what it is. I know people are still playing it. It does do some work, but I'm still not a big fan of it. This card has come up on my pick order here. This is Infuse with Venom. This is a 3-time fastball. Give a unit +2 health, which comes in handy, and deadly this turn. Not a bad removal spell, to be all honest. 3 is a lot, but it normally saves your unit and guarantees you to kill theirs, so that's pretty legit. Next up, we have Populist Controller. This is a 6/6 Sentinel for 6 time with Valor. So anytime for each unit that blocks it, it gets a +1/+1 for the until the end of turn. Pretty straightforward, solid top end in these time decks. Next up, Spiny Grenadin. 1/1 Grenadin Beast for 1 fire. Entomb, create and draw a power burst. Meh, I've yet to see this in a deck. Rule the Skies. This is a fast spell for 3 primal. Deal 2 damage to an enemy unit. If it has flying, deal 6 damage to it instead. I've played him. I played one of. And Noah's Fury. This card is absolutely fantastic in aggro decks. I mean, it's great, period. But in aggro decks is where it really shines. This is a 2 fire fast spell. Play a +2 weapon on one of your units. It gets quick draw this turn. Solid combat trick. I mean, granted, better on offense than defense, but it's still solid. All right, Alex, what are you looking at in your comments?
So there's quite a few playable commons here. The runes are great, right? You run as many of those as you can get in your decks, but it's not a first pick. You can get those late. The Blitzstone is really good removal, especially for the Ursa Squadron, like kind of the Bane 2-drop common of the format. It's why Boiling Geyser is playable if you can get that early enough, but it is often cut for me. Like, it's the last card I cut because it's very time specific. The Infuse with Venom, like you, has also gone up for me. Still just a one-of card. You don't need too many. It's not a first pick. The Noah's Fury, that's a great card, especially for aggro. The 2 power or toughness. How do you say that? The 2 sword weapon.
I think the devs say strength,
but
I always just say attack.
So the 2 attack stays, right? It's not going to be quick draw anymore, but you do get some value that stays. But as far as first pick goes out of the commons, it's probably the Pop Controller for me. Many games end with that guy dropping down late and just finishing up the job. So I think I'm on Pop Controller out of the commons. Just a great 6-drop. Especially in time, you can kind of ramp to it and drop them earlier than normal, and it's very scary. So it's close between that and the Blitzstone, I would say, is the second for me.
That definitely says something about Populist Controller as well, right? Because typically on this show, we've talked about where you only want a handful of 5 and 6 drops, so you can kind of wait to get those, and the fact that you're willing to take it first pick is pretty impressive, you know?
Yeah. It's also, even if you end up only splashing time, like that's a card that'll still make that deck, right? So I think there's a little more value there as a first pick. It almost kind of keeps you open a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really, like, you can actually run 4 or more of these in a deck, because if time's flowing, you're also going to get plenty of its little BFF 2-drop. What's it called? The supplier. Open Way Supplier.
Mm-hmm.
Open Way Supplier. Yep.
Yeah, that card it has let me down sometimes, but very few times compared to its upside.
Yeah, the number of times I've seen it give killer to a 0 attack unit is higher than 1. It's pretty fun.
Or another supplier.
Yes.
Right, the 1/1 killer. Yeah.
And then sometimes it just hits the nut draw and it puts on your Populist Controller, or hits it on your Overwhelm unit, so it's sweet. Okay. And yeah, I will say, and I guess we'll talk about it later, but just the influence requirements of these cards has definitely been lenient compared to some of the previous sets, but we'll talk about that in a little bit later. All right, John, sending it over to you for the uncommons, my man. We have, starting off with Retrofitted Sentinel. This is a 4/2 Sentinel for 4 fire. Summon, give Retrofitted Sentinel charge, or give the top unit of your deck +2/+2 permanently. Then we I like this card. I personally do. It's weird because initially I wasn't sure if I wanted to windmill slam it or if it was just good. I definitely haven't gone down on it. It's performed great every time I've drawn it. But I like this card. I think it's less of a windmill slam. I think it's just a good card. I like having him in my deck, even though the 4-drop slot may feel a little overpopulated in this format. I could be wrong. 3s for sure. I think there are a million 3s in this format. 4s, I'm not 100% sure. We'll see in a minute. Next up, we have Hypnotic Valk or Hip Valk, which is one of my favorite cards as well. I think this card is solid. 4/4 Valkyrie for 5 double shadow, flying, and then amplify 2, play Madness, which allows you to steal and ready one of your opponent's units until end of turn. And finally, Searing Strike. This is a 2 Praxis spell. Silence a unit and deal 2 damage to it. If it dies, replenish the 2 power. All right, John, what do you think?
Yeah, you talk about Windmill Slam. That's such an easy hip Valkyrie, Hypnotic Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Like, I would probably look at the Populist Controller honestly over like the other 2 uncommons, but definitely not the Valkyrie.
Yeah, it normally enables a really good attack the turn it comes into play if it's later in the game, and if not, it's just that's about the top end of the standard, right? For Eternal Limited, a 4/4 flyer for 5 is pretty darn good. It's typically going to be the biggest thing in the format, or in the air,
and that's one you'll play multiples of, and that's definitely a sign. Like if you're getting past those after like going into pick 3 or later, that Shadow's probably open. Like that's a sign for sure.
Yep.
A little side note with the Valk, and me and John were playing a game and we didn't know this was going to happen because we probably never cast Madness on a full board before. But both the opponent and I had full boards and cast Hypnotic Valkyrie. We didn't know what was going to happen, so I only amplified it once, and it took their unit and like immediately kills it because it has nowhere to
put in your void. Yeah, because there's no space for it, and
that is so hot.
Yeah, so John's like, "Oh, we could have killed their 2 best units." But it was kind of like, "Oh, we didn't know that was going to happen." So yeah, if you ever have that situation, remember that.
That is great to know. That is, it would have been questionable, right? It could have easily just asked you to sack one of your units instead. Like I definitely,
and there was
just not worked.
Like I think there was another play that we wanted to do that same turn, like with our remaining power, like just because of the uncertainty. So.
No, I completely understand. I mean, you guys remember that draft where I had the 2 relics, the one that made your units whatever stat was lower equal to the higher one, and then I had the one that lets you make, I forgot the names of them now, but the one that lets you, whenever you play a unit, make those stats, make a unit that's in play already copy the stats of the unit you played, right? And so we did it for science. Like I took both of them. I'm like, all right, well, if we ever both get them both in play, and I still question, I'm like, okay, which one goes first? Like, does it copy the unit, or does it get the lower stat, or does it multiply the stats? And we finally figured out that it did work in our favor. It makes the unit bigger, and then it places it. But even then, the actual UI interaction is the opposite, and that's right. It asked me to pick a unit first, and then it doubled it. So I'm like, that's kind of sketchy. So yeah, no, that's a fantastic. I would have never guessed that interaction, but that's awesome. Turning men, you get a 4/4 flyer and you kill their best dude. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
In a stalled board like that.
Well, because and we had something we could have sacrificed the unit, so I wasn't sure if sacrifice a unit to make room for the unit coming over. So we just cast it with Amplify, and it just killed the unit. So. We learned what happened.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so sick, dude. That's really good. All right, sweet. And I'll tell you what, though, guys. Even though this pack is pretty strong, it gets stronger. I have probably one of the best rares in this format. John, what do you think of Guardian Angel? This is a 5/5 Valkyrie for 6 double justice, flying, endurance, and then summon. Give one of your other units invulnerable to damage while you have Guardian Angel. Fantastic flavor on this card. But I mean,
this is I can't think of a better rare. Maybe a legendary or something, but I think this is the best rare I can think of in these packs. Honestly, maybe Azrog number 2. This card's just amazing. It's a beater, and it's like good on attack and defense. So it's like, if you're using quadrant theory, this has a little more going on than Azrog in that regard, for sure. The way it gives you like an infinite blocker while being an endurance unit itself means it comes up the ground and the air potentially. It costs a little much, but I mean, this is not difficult to get to 6 format as long as you're able to stabilize against an aggro deck with your deck's construction. Yeah, and this is such a good card. It's like a windmill slam for sure.
Yeah, I think it's so good. So good. Alex, you have anything to add?
Negative. Good. Sucks that all these other cards are in this pack because it's an easy Guardian Angel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Injustice is, you're happy to be Injustice in this format. I mean, I think all factions are perfectly playable. Like, I always just draft what's open personally, but...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, well, let's go ahead and just dive into talking about the format. I'll be honest with you. I have had very little success with Primal. I've tried. I've done this, and maybe I played it wrong, but I had like 3 Asri Scouts, the flyer, right? The 2/1 flyer. I had 2 of the Grenahawks, the 1/4 that you can pump, and it just I don't know. I guess I just wasn't aggressive enough or what, but I don't know. I haven't been very impressed with Primal to the point where I kind of almost actively try not to be in it at this point. But I've drafted this format so much less than I normally do because I'm so busy now that I don't know. I still openly admit that I don't have the best grasp of the format. So I don't know. So you still, I mean, you do think Primal's just still, you're perfectly fine being in it in any
definitely.
combination?
Yeah, if it's the open faction, you should be getting past some good uncommons. Which, as per usual, that's like Primal's thing, right? Like, so if it's not open, you won't be seeing those, and then you probably don't want to be in Primal in that case. But like, yeah, when it's open and like they're passing those merciless officers, I can't remember the names of the other ones, but like the 4/4 Aegis stealth unit's pretty good, and like if those are coming your way, that means Primal's probably open, and then you're also going to get rewarded in packs 2 and 3. There's a lot of really good Primal cards at common and uncommon, and like. I think
some of the best removal,
I believe, is
Permafrost and Polymorph.
Yeah, and then the Unstable, and then you got like Stun Dad at 4, and like all those cards, right? Like, and I think you want to pair it with, I think any faction's fine to pair it with, but like right now, Time is a particularly good one for just like good stuff. And then I think if you're in like Feln or like Skycrag, you really need some synergies to be mindful of. Like kind of those cards you mentioned a minute ago, Jedi. Like the best card I think that goes with those cards that you talked about, like the flyers. It's that fire common in these packs, right? It's the one that if you attack with 2 units, it pings the opponent's face.
Oh yeah.
That
card's just great.
Can't remember the name of it, but like it's good in a lot of decks, but like it's particularly good with those, otherwise anemic evasive units. You can like just straight up race with a well constructed deck like that. And then with Felon you get some good removal in the middle packs, and if Shadow and Primal are both open, the uncommons in both those colors are great. So no, I'm happy to play Primal, but like I kind of mentioned earlier, like I always just try and be in the open lane. Like I think that's the strategy that works best for me in this format. I think you can kind of try and force some stuff, if you like a particular, faction pairing or certain strategy. But I think you're going to probably go up against some more powerful decks if you're doing that right now.
Gotcha. What do you think, Alex? Where are you at as far as Primal goes?
The Ping the Face fire unit is the Vanguard, Mercenary Vanguard.
Yes.
Let's see here. I like Primal a lot. John mentioned the card that I see way too many of, which is the Merciless Officer. I've made decks that have like 3 of those units in there.
Is that the one with Intrigue that could be a 4/5 Berserk, or is that the plus
exactly
2 or the
yeah?
4?
So it's like 4/2
Yeah.
for 3 in a pinch. It's still
Berserk.
a 4/2.
No, it only gets Berserk with 5.
Yeah, it only gets Berserk with 5. So it's like a very basic unit on 3. But Intrigue 2 plus 3 health and Berserk, it becomes a 4/5 Berserk stealth that, that's like on par with it being rare, like power level, and it just blows your opponents out, especially with combat tricks. There's so much damage coming over with that guy. The 5-drop Aegis guy, which the name always eludes me, on the Grizzled Guard.
There you go.
that's a great stealth that kind of blows out the other 5-drop stealths because of the health, the health boost that it gets on blocking when it reveals itself. Freight Asri is probably the best blue common. It's the 2/4 flying, gives you Aegis when you summon it. That's just a great flyer. It basically gums up the sky when they're almost blocks everything that's less power than that. You get rewarded in packs 2 and 3, like John said. So I'm not afraid to be primal, especially if it's flowing in the first pack. And yeah, you could be open. I'm not afraid. There's no color pairing that I don't want to do, no matter what. I think it's pretty well balanced in that sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess maybe I just need to be a little more aggressive about drafting it and see what happens, I guess, is my best. I mean, I don't know.
No, just if those cards are flowing, you might want to go into primal, basically.
Yeah. I guess maybe just my evaluation of the cards. Because like I said, the one time I did do Sky Crag, I thought I had a pretty legit deck, and it just didn't get there. And then the other time I had Primal Heavy, I was Huru with 2 concoctions, which I feel like concoction always wrecks my day when other people play it. And I've yet to really make it work. But
how many Merciless Officers were in that deck? Because that's like concoction's best friend.
Yeah, no, I think I had the other Berserk unit. I don't remember which one, the cheaper one. I'm drawing a blank now. I don't think it was the Berserker.
Cheaper Berserk guy?
Oh, the Grafter. That's what I had. I had the Grafter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other, the one of the better tricks in the whole format, right, is that time common, telekinetic shackles, right? And so if you're trying to connect with that, and that's a card you need to be very mindful of, and the pauses are usually pretty obvious as the game's going, so you can't go all in, right, and just get wrecked by that. So there's
such a hard card to play around.
It is hard to play around,
and you can run 4, or I've seen 4 or more of those in a good deck before. It's there's not really a hard limit on those because it's just it's so flexible and good.
Yeah, just does so much work.
Yeah, hands down. All right, let's do another broad stroke before we start narrowing down. 2 things. First one, it's definitely an aggressive format, right? I'm not the only one that feels that way, because I've definitely drafted my usual mid-range good stuff, and I feel like I've just consistently been on the back foot on these draft games. And then this last stream was a perfect example, right? I drafted 2 mid-rangey decks. One of them I will say was a little kind of combo-y because I was just trying stuff because I was streaming, so we were trying to make supply lines work, but the deck wasn't a bad deck, and I was just on the back foot every single game. And then I was just for the last draft, I was like, all right, I guess I'll just force aggro. We'll see if it's Skycrag or Rakano. I ended up going Rakano, and I just 7-0'd it. No problem. No issues whatsoever, bro. And the deck had nothing special about it. I had 1 Fiery Eruption at 6. I had 2 4-drops. I think it was Overthrow, which is the green removal spell that's amazing. And then 1 Bounty Hunter, I forget what it's called, but the 2/1 that double damage that can either make a dude or silence a unit. That was it. Everything else was 3s and 2s the entire way, and I just smashed people. And like I said, I've felt on the back foot anytime I've drafted mid range. So I don't know where you guys at on that.
Go for it, Alex.
I think if you play too slowly, then you can get run over very easily in this format. I think a lot of it has to do with the 2-drop that I mentioned earlier, the Ursa Squadron. There's so many decks that have that unit, and it could have multiple 3, 4, or 5 of them, and it just really gets the aggressive ball rolling on you very quickly, and it's very stifling, to have these units keep getting bigger, and so you need ways to deal with that unit. If your deck has ways to deal with that unit, then you'll be okay, because all the other units kind of just trade back and forth with each other, whereas that 2/2 has Valor. It's very hard to block. So you use units that typically aren't good, like the 3-1, just vanilla 3-1 red unit. I don't even know what the name is. It's in the draft packs. Not a very good unit, but it blocks that 2-2 very well. Other 2-2s don't block it, so it can be very aggressive format. If you can stabilize and have some lifesteal, like the Shadow Rune is good for coming back, and then there are some big units that you can gain some lifesteal with, but I tend to make sure I have a lot of early drops and just like a few finishers because I don't want to get ran over early. So that's just what I've been doing lately, but I don't know. So I think you're onto something with that.
I mean, you had mentioned, was it you or was it John that mentioned having 4 Populist Controllers in a deck?
Right, but usually have means to get those guys out quicker. It's not just 4. Like, I'm going to play 18 power with no ramp and get to my 6, because by then you're probably going to get ran over, So,
Gotcha.
I mean, that's just my take on it so far.
And you can also try and get there with, like you mentioned, the stat lines are really important on your curve because of Valor, right? So you mentioned that 3-1, yeah, like normally that's a card, unless you're a very aggressive deck, you wouldn't prioritize that at all. But in this format, even if you're a slow deck, that's like actually that's like where you want to be with blocking, because it actually eats like the boogeyman 2-drop, like you mentioned, and things like that. Like you don't want the bold adventure stat line because it's not a 2-2 format. It's like a secret 3-3 format or whatever. So you want like 3-2s and 3-1s as like, whether you're aggressive or defensive. So it's like a little counterintuitive there with other Eternal formats. So that if your deck's goal is to always get to 6 to start winning, you got to make sure you can get there. Like you don't necessarily have to be an aggressive deck at all. I think you just have to like be really mindful of like the cards you're picking with your strategy in mind, because otherwise you just won't get there. And like if you don't get there with the ramp, for example, in like that deck you just mentioned with like 4 pops or whatever, like another way to help you get there is to just have so many telekinetic shackles or something like that, because that's a card that'll help you like get a few cheeky trades like on the way up the curve, and then it'll help you like not just die. Right, like it's just
a
really
good valor combatant card is the shackles for sure.
And I mentioned trading, right? Like whether you want to trade or not also kind of depends on your deck's win condition, right? Like if you're a Behold the Truth deck, you kind of want to avoid trading wherever possible. You want to, you hope that just the threat of trading will be enough. And like, for example, if it's like a board where there could be some trading, but they've got you on a shackles, that'll help you get to that late game, because they'll they won't necessarily want to just go for the trade when they know you're just going to shackles them anyway.
Yeah, I've liked both those cards, which has typically had me kind of lean a little heavier into time when I can. I don't necessarily think that's always correct, but having Behold is just, God, you just have a warm sense of like at some point you're going to be able to just close this game if your opponent does get to you, right? Because I've been on the flip side of that as well, where my opponent seems to be just holding on to every unit they can. I'm like, man, I really feel like they have a Behold somewhere. So it's a race now, right? You can't just sit back and hopefully you draw your one card to kind of get you out there. You're like, okay, I need to actively be either keeping the board small or just make sure that I just don't die to a top deck Behold the Truth, because you just know that they kind of just, you get that vibe. Like, that's what I feel like they're kind of waiting on. And that's not going to end well for me in the slightest if I don't make something happen here and now. So,
yeah. And now that like, since the last draft pack changes, right? Like Horn of Plenty is, I think, pretty boosted right now too. So like that's kind of a similar strategy that we've kind of played in draft formats before, right? Where it's like, and normally any opponent would want to trade this dorky 2 or 3 drop with this unit, and you're like, so you can tell they're kind of playing into a Behold or a Horn, and that should affect the way you're playing the game probably.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one, it's really tough for me. I won't lie. I've I've drank the Kool-Aid. I've kind of bought into it. Even though I have been notorious for, it's so crazy because I'm not necessarily a very greedy deck builder. I like to think I'm not, but man, sometimes influence, just the shuffler is just like, nope. Even now with this last Rakano deck, I had 3 dual power, right? But they all came into play depleted in some form or another. And like, man, did I get punished for that some opening hands where I'm like, really, you're just gonna give me my seat and my banner where I can't but this is essentially playing off color runes in your deck. We've seen the power of the shadow one. I've definitely come up on that one. Holy cow, does that one just kind of change clocks and win games and stuff like that, because it essentially, for those of you at home that don't know the card, I forgot the name of it specifically, but it lets you play unblockable and lifesteal this turn on a unit, and if you get to 10 you could do it on 2 units, and that has, you know, changed the clock when 2 people are racing, being able to gain 5 to 7 to 8 life in 1 turn, and also closed out a game when you're kind of stalemated on an even board state, and then you can give your biggest unit, your 2 biggest units, unblockable to get in the last points of damage.
Rune of Illusion.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, where are you guys at? Let's start. We started with you, John. So let's start with you, Alex. Where are you at as far as playing runes in off-color decks? I.e., maybe your Rakano deck and you're running the Shadow Rune or the Time Rune.
If I'm playing a deck that is mostly, I mean, not mostly, it's a 2-color deck that has a very solid power base, then I'll throw in some off-color runes. But I stopped just throwing them into all decks because I've been dabbling into like 3-color decks where the power base is a little more stretched. And if you don't have the fixing for it, then the runes become kind of a liability when you need your 3rd color. So I don't play the off-color runes in 3 or more color decks anymore, but that's just me.
Got you. Are there any that you prefer over others right now? Like, where are you at in your ranking system on them?
They're all very good if you're in that color. The green one was very high for me at first, but that one now has slowly gone down. I think the shadow one, because it gains you life late, and then also just the fire one because it deals 2 to something, is very relevant even later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
When you can get up to 2 activations and like 2 stuns or 2 teleports is really strong as well. But yeah, I think the fire one and then the shadow and then the blue and the yellow with the green probably last. But that's just me.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way, honestly. I've kind of come down a little bit on the Justice one as well. Like, I normally like Saddle Up, but I think Saddle Up being at fast speed is what really where it gets its strength from, versus at slow speed it's not nearly as powerful. So I agree. I thought the red one was the highest one initially, but sometimes, man, it's like you do get to reach out and get some free damage in there, or obviously best case scenario, you get to kill something relevant with it. But man, paying 5 sometimes in a fire deck, it's like you want to be doing something else. You know what I mean? Sometimes it still is the correct thing because you're essentially getting a card off the board for free. But there have definitely been some times where I'm like, is that really the most efficient thing I could do this turn versus playing a 3 and a 2 drop, or a 3 drop and a trick, or just a 5 drop, right? So it's been a little clunky sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And then, but yeah, the time one, I'm still kind of medium on. I haven't played enough Primal, obviously, for the Primal one to really be amazing. Obviously, it can. I mean, stunning 2 units can definitely kind of get in that damage that you've been hoping to sneak through, right? And make a world of difference. I just kind of haven't been there. Big surprise to absolutely no one. But yeah, the Shadow one has come way up for me. Way up. Plus, you know, Shadow has Glen Sapper. And I think that is an absolutely amazing late game card. So if I can splash a Shadow Rune to facilitate not only the unblockable in my aggressive decks, but also the Glen Sapper that I want to play late, then I think it's a really sweet combo. And obviously there's something like Cut Ties and Execute and Shadow as well, which are all cards you want to play late. Where are you at on it, John?
I don't have a lot to add. Like, if I had to rank them, I would also say like Shadow, and then Shadow's like the best for me, and then Justice is the worst, and then the other three are probably just tied in the middle, basically. And yeah, exactly what Alex said. Like in your normal 2-color deck, first of all, I would like to have some like dual powers and or some like incidental fixing, like other ways to gain influence. But like in those cases, yeah, I'll put like maybe up to 5 off-color runes in a deck like that and like it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then if it's like a 3-color deck, I love having runes for fixing.
Yeah.
Right, like they're not like the influence isn't, it's like normally you want your fixing to be like dual color. Well, if you can have your fixing also be like a utility spell like late in the game and things like that, it's just like super nice. So I love on color runes when I'm playing 3 or 4 colors. And again, I still want to have some kind of dual powers that I got in packs 2 and 3 in a deck like that, but most of my 7-win decks have been 3 factions, like 2 and a splash color for the most part. And I think in a few of those, I'll even, like, if my fixing is just that good, I'll still play an off-color rune or 2.
Gotcha. Yeah, sweet. Like I said, I was initially felt like that might be a little too cheeky or the greed play, but I won't lie, I've come around to it. I definitely am right there with you guys as far as playing them, and I have not looked back since, if I'm being completely honest. So there's that.
I will be sad to see those go from the draft packs because they're great.
And we mentioned earlier, like the Felm deck I was playing in that open. Well, I was playing a cheeky Rune of Relocation in that, like, as a shout out to the drafters everywhere.
Nice.
And you said it was quite relevant most of the time, right?
Yeah, it was like a stun meta, right? Like lots of permafrost and things like that, and it also could reset your grafters, and it was just like the deck. It's not like a heavy influence deck anyway, so like yeah, it was completely fine. It never hurt me in any of my games, like, and occasionally it was very handy. So that was the weirdest deck building decision I did with that. And yeah, so yeah, some of these runes are
growing out of me. Like if you busted that out, it's like, oh no, he's got one of those in the deck. No.
Yeah.
Get wrecked, fool. A couple of specific cards that we've kind of adjusted as well. That's pretty much what I had as far as broad strokes go. I mean, I do agree with you. I think on a higher level, regardless, like being the bigger man, I do feel like there is viability in every color. For sure to play it. I have my preferences. Rakano is probably my biggest go-to. I still like Fire quite a bit, and Justice has some cards. That Alchemist is really solid. If I'm being honest with you, I think that card is really well positioned in this format. I've seen, man, I really wanted the Argenport deck to work out really well for me. Just because I enjoy Argenport, and I kind of feel like I like the way the deck plays out, but I think it's a little trickier, or I've just, once again, just experience-wise, seen it played out significantly better on my opponent's side than when I've been able to jam it up. But talking about some specific cards, I've been seeing that Awakened being played quite a bit. Where are you guys at on that card? Because I don't particularly think it's good. I mean, obviously, if you can discard a card that still gives you value, I guess that's fine, but you're still just getting 2 1/1 guys. I don't necessarily think that's great, to be completely honest with you, but I've seen it be played quite a bit, if I'm being honest with you. So where are you guys at on that?
I mean, I'm still not really a fan. Yeah, I had one sketchy game. I remember one time where my opponent, was on the play, and they turn 1 awakened me, and like I was just literally because of my run out, I was having to just take the hit from both of these 1/1s, basically every turn of that game, and I still won that game. And like they got like extra discard value, and like it was a very synergistic deck, but ultimately your opponent can just take that too, until they can block it without just wrecking themselves, right? So like I don't know, it does put an early clock down, but it's such a long clock that it's like I think it's just barely playable in a discard heavy deck where you have a lot of you need the enablers for your payoffs or whatever. But I'm still not into it myself.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, not so much into that card, but I really like that deck. It's probably my favorite deck in the format when it works.
It's super fun.
And the main cog of that deck is the 3/2 guy.
Yeah, is it Racketeers or something?
Yeah,
Oh, that card is so good.
It's like
and then of course Ransack.
Ransack with that, right? And then you also get the Tinker in the draft packs that lets you make the scout card. Those are pushed, I think, because that facilitates that 4-drop a lot. And then, a turn 4 Ransack and a 4/3, or a 2/2 and a 4/3 it's like almost game over. Almost. Like, it's really hard to combat that from the other side. So
Yeah, tell me about Ransack, because I still don't think the card's that good. But gosh, like I like it better when I'm the aggressive deck, because I'm like, sure, take a power or a 2-drop from me, like lol. But when I'm like a decent mid-range deck, God, they always, like, I had them take both my Behold the Truths one time. I was like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, another
That's
time
Jedi
they took my removal spell, and then I don't know, like something else, I forgot what, but I was just like, you got my I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. Like, I don't know,
it's surprisingly playable. I mean, I think there's some strategy to it if you want to maximize its efficacy, right? Like, the timing of it is pretty important. If you identify you're playing against a primal deck, and you have it in your hand, you probably want to play it before turn 4, because if you're playing primal, you're playing Freydazuri, which incidental face Aegis just shuts down Ransack, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, you got to think about that timing. And then if they're playing green but not primal, you probably want to wait until they buff, like with some Warcry, or you mentioned Tinker, or the Alchemist, like something like that. So you want to like try and get that upgraded unit in those cases. And then like, if you're just running a synergy deck, you care less about the timing. And there's also, like, yeah, I've seen some pretty hilarious Ransacks where, they'll all, like, it's like, man, they seem to always get your legendary that you're running or whatever. Like, that happens. But I think, and sometimes you want to do it early or late, depending on whether you actively are trying to hit power drops or not, or something like that, right? So, like, there's a lot of actual play with the card, but ultimately it is kind of random. I think there's some way in the format also to, I'm trying to remember the exact card, but I think there's some way to, like, there's not like scout in the format, but there's some way. Right? Am I?
Their Warcry. Oh, that's what they do. They took my Warcry unit. That was the other one that I was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. So I mean, if you well-timed Ransacks can be above average, right? So, but some opponents like will just Ransack without even thinking about it, and it's like, then it's just a dice roll. But you can definitely maximize its value. And then it's like, if your draft is just kind of going off the rails and it's like looking middling, you just play some Ransacks, and hopefully your opponent's playing a better deck and just take their stuff.
Yeah, right. If your deck is Garbo, like, that just makes Ransack that much better.
Yeah, I think I said that in the set review, right? It's like, my decks are always better. Well, sometimes like I misread the signals or whatever. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna Ransack some fools. Let's go.
Yeah, fair. That'll definitely be something we touch on the Sunset Show, which we may or may not be getting close to. Did they mention anything about a new set?
They haven't mentioned anything yet. Okay. Yeah, we're not. We were expecting some kind of format change for the upcoming Throne Open, which is fast approaching. So,
yeah, we may talk about that on a later show, just to lead up to it. Just to diversify our content like we normally do a little bit, but. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's going to be... It's not my soapbox card. I know my soapbox card is going to be Thorncrawler. But I just... That card is very polarizing to me. Like, I feel like if it's worked out well for my opponents, and for me, I'm like, oh, great, I get 2 power out of it. Or, they're 2-drop. I'm like, oh, gosh, darn it. So that's that. The flip side of that, another card I wanted to talk about is the what's the horrible artwork? It's Queen's Elite, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that was our EJ preview card.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that card has impressed me quite a bit. The Warcry 2, like, I was a little skeptical of it, right? Because I'm like, well, you're not always going to be able to attack with 2 units, and then sometimes there's going to be times where you want to attack with more than 2 units, and you're paying 3 for a vanilla 2/2, but man, that thing can run away with the game very quickly if you can get 1, sometimes 2 attacks with it, or as far as triggering the Warcry 2. Oh man. And then, obviously Warcry 2, you turn a 2/2 into a 4/4, you play it, then you can attack with that and give the next thing a buff, and it kind of runs away with the game fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's overperformed any expectation I had before the set came out, for sure.
Are you pretty high on it as well, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly costed. If it was a 3/3 for 3, it would just be broken, like just hard. And you got to make it a little bit susceptible to dying, because that's a very powerful +2/+2 trigger in a deck that's already like doing that kind of stuff already. You're going to get some huge units for cheap costs, so yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, that card's been solid. Because I've stayed away from Primal, I haven't been able to play either of the tandem things for Primal, which I particularly thought were good. Wait, well, I think the Skycrag one that gives a +1/+1, that's a rare, right?
No, it's uncommon.
It is uncommon. Okay, so yeah,
or whatever.
And then the flying one, I thought the flying one was gonna be good, but once again, the 2 times I drafted it, I was like, well, even if it just facilitates like the last 2 attacks, I think it's still pretty strong, right? And
I think that one really wants to be Huru, because then you get the 4-drop that gives endurance for tandem attacks as well.
Yep.
Right?
I think you're right. I think you're onto something. Either way, I haven't been able to really maximize on either of those, which is kind of awkward, right? Because the relics are kind of typically one of them is a relic weapon, so that's a little more awkward, right? Just the straight flying one is a relic weapon, but the other one's just a straight relic, which, as far as I'm aware in this format, there's like not too many ways to kind of interact with that.
Like Furnace Mage is boosted right now, and there's a few cards like that are like units that incidentally kill relics. So it's not just foolproof or anything, but it's like basically limited to fire.
Yeah. Let's see. Topple was another one. I was high on it initially, and then I was like, this card is way too awkward to play. I don't like it. And then I'm back. Like I like it again. What about you guys?
Yeah, Topple's great. It's great. One of the more efficient removal spells in the format. And like, even if you like get up to your Populist Controller and it's the biggest thing on the board, well, you're you're already kind of winning. And if they get rid of it, then you can then use it. Or if they just play their own Populist Controller, you can kill that. Like yeah, even in a unit with a deck with big units, it's still good.
It's kind of the only good removal out of that cycle, right? Of all the conditional removal. I don't think the other 2 even compare. One is like kill something that's not quite that size, right? Not the biggest on the board. And then the other one is something that took damage this turn, if I remember correctly.
So one kills the the non-biggest, right? Yeah, it's definitely the best of the bunch. Like, it's not even close. I still haven't even really played the one where kills unit that's taken damage, but I've seen, I've had some opponents play that to pretty good success. But I still
they have like ping cards or something.
It's just like sometimes it's like an awkward situation where it just like becomes effective, right? Like I can't think of a good example, but I've seen it be pretty decent.
It's like you can that one's fast, the damage one, so you can block the Populist Controller with the 1/1 and then finish it off or whatever,
Yeah, you're 2-for-1ing yourself, but sometimes it's worth.
Yeah.
I think the Shadow one, or I guess they're both, but the kill unit, if it's not the biggest unit on the board, is probably shines the best in Xenon, just because you'll have those Populist controllers, right? So you can pick off one of the 4/4s, or I think it's mainly 4. I don't think there's too many 5s in this format, like 5 attack. I think most of them kind of sit at the 4 range, so you can kind of do that, right? But yeah, I definitely think Topple is where it's at, and it's weird because I don't know, like I don't know. I really can't tell you why, but I remember those games where I had Topples. I was drafting aggressively because I'm like, man, this seems pretty decent. And I just was like, oh my God, it's just rotting in my hand. It's like, what's going on here? But it may have been initially when the majority of the people in the format were drafting.
Like stun Populist controllers, so you couldn't even block with your controllers and you couldn't kill their units that were slightly bigger than yours?
Yeah, at one point, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, you had like a bad taste in your mouth. You had like 3 topples in your hand. They're not doing anything, you know? You're like, this card's bad.
Yeah. You know me, I try to be real. I try to play the numbers. And when it's just like, ugh, you know, and in my defense, and we'll talk about that more on the Sunset Show, of course, but Thorncrawler, well, I guess we could talk about it now. I mean, we all know when the Sunset Show is going to be, and I don't mind repeating myself, but like, man, I just, it's a thing of mine. I don't like cards that say can't block, right? Because it's so, you just have to be able to attack, right? That's the only time that card's good, is when you are able to attack. And sometimes that's just not the way the game goes. And yes, it has lifesteal. And I think that's what people's argument has been for it being significantly better than, you know, and the stealth aspect. But it's a 4/1. Everything kills it, right? Like
it. So here's a mental.
Yeah, go ahead. Have at it.
Like it's pseudo can block, right? Because of the threat of attack, if that makes sense. Because as soon as they swing out, then you get to swing, right? So it's almost like blocking.
Except they could leave back their random 2-drop or their supplier and still
you get to kill it when you attack because of its high attack power, and you just gain back all the life. So it's just really good at racing.
Trades with it. That means they lost their ramp. You know, that's fine. I don't hate it as much as you, Jedi, either. I think it's better than you think.
I mean, I've tried it. Am I just playing it wrong? Because, I mean, once again, I don't think I'm that great of a player where I'm like, oh, the rest of the world is wrong. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. Like, I get it. Everybody else likes it. So I'm like, okay. But every time I've put it in my deck, I'm just like, ugh.
You want to be aggressive with it, right? You want to have it in an aggressive deck. It's definitely best in like Stone Scar. You know, if I had to pick a faction pairing, it's fine in like Argenport, but it definitely shines in like Stone Scar, because then you also have like plenty of Anoa's Furies probably in your deck, which is like a very good card with it, because then, you know, it gets to attack freely basically. You definitely, like, it just goes way up. Like, I mean, this is a format where you always want to be the aggressor. I think even in a controlling deck, you want to. It's a liability to block, period, in this format because of shackles and stuff like that. So, you know, I think it shines better than it ever will in this format.
Mm-hmm. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, we can keep soapboxing on that one, but no, it's for a card that says it can't block. Like, who wants to block? Get out of here.
And I get you. Normally, I would not even think twice and not play that card, no matter what. But I have put it in decks, even though it says it can't block. You know, mostly because it's a stealth unit, and it's kind of like when you play, your opponent doesn't know what it is, right? So, kind of makes blocking a crapshoot. So.
Yeah,
and like a lot of times, like, you know, there's mental games with stealth unit. Like, that's something that's like a whole topic basically. But like, you know, just by attacking with your stealth unit, you're signifying that you either don't care about the trading, or, you know, on a lot of board states, maybe if they try and block it, you're going to eat their unit. So a lot of people, especially those that aren't like intimately familiar with the format, will just let that first attack through to reveal it. And then at that point, you've got an 8-point life swing, and then it'll still trade with their unit next turn when it attacks again. So, like, if your deck wants to race, like, it's a very good card in those cases, right?
See, and that just might be my own preference, because for me, if you're Shadow and you're attacking with a 3-drop, like, I'm blocking it because I'm just gonna assume it's Leatherhide.
Well, but what's their other faction, right?
Well, even then though, so all right, let's go ahead and kind of transition into this topic, because this is kind of what I want to end this show with. Where are you guys at as far as interacting with Shadow? Because I'll be honest with you, I try to reveal them as quickly as possible if I have something that can do it, and if not, most of the time, especially the 3-drop ones, I just block them. I get them off the board. I just assume that they're the 3/2s, and everything else is bonus, right? If they don't block with one, then it's either going to be the 1/4 that gives them a time sigil, or it's going to be the 4/1 lifesteal, right? Everything else, you typically see the combats, which are 3/2s, and the Leatherhides that are 3/2s. What's another stealth unit at 3 that we think is good? I think all the other ones are just bad.
I mean, there's
the 3/3. There you go. Yeah,
there's like
the 3/3. So the 3/3 does bite me. That's the one where I kind of eat my words, essentially, because that one does get me sometimes, because I'm always typically going to assume it's the 1/4 or one of the 3/2s, right? And so occasionally the 3/3 will get me, not always, but occasionally. That's the one that kind of bites me the most.
Like, so I haven't even played the format all that much compared to some other players, right? And I think I can, with like 95% certainty, guess what the stealth unit is, like, every time. Like,
yeah.
And so that just my intuition of what the card is affects how I proceed every time. I don't have any like hard rules, but like I have, just based on the colors they're showing and how they're playing, like I feel like I can nail down what the card is and play as if it's that unit I think it is. And like the number of times that I, get bit in my butt for that is very, very low. So like as tricky as it seems, like if you just actually think about it and kind of look at the picture as a whole, and like I almost never play around rare stealth units, but occasionally I do. And I have this running joke with IP Longno where it's like every time he says it's a Kako, it's a freaking Kako.
Oh my god, dude! Sizzle did that to me too. Yeah, he was like, "I feel like that's a Kako." I'm like,
you can kind of, it's like if they went multiple turns without revealing it, and like the trickiest time to suss out a Kako is if they're playing Combre, because the fly trap is also one that tends to stay revealed for a long time. Like, there's all these little things you can watch for, like how long has it been stealth, like, what colors are they playing, like all the fire ones reveal at the start of the turn, so it's like if they're playing fire and X, it's the other color, like if it goes a turn, it's like there's all these little things, and then of course there's incidental ways to reveal it to where you extra don't care, and like you want to prioritize cards like that for most of your decks in the format, but like literally like you can have a pretty high success rate of figuring out what the card is if you really think about it and pay attention to like how the game is being played.
Yeah, obviously tricks like the topple thing, can you target it with topple, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. Yeah, that's additional ways to help you with that, but I mean just without having those things, like I feel like I can almost always tell you what the card is.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. You're really right. You kind of get blown out sometimes by rares, but they're rares. What are you going to do, right? Granted, of course, the Jedi luck, I've definitely lost to back-to-back slugs or whatever the worm is, the take your spell and counter it. I'm like, oh my, like literally in the same draft. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me right now.
Yeah. And like, that's one where it's like, if you're like, man, if this is that slug, I get so wrecked. Maybe you don't take that, and you have a feeling that it could be like, maybe you don't take that play. If you can, there's some situations where you're like, well, if it's that, then I lose anyway, or, that kind of thing, you just do it. But, sometimes you might wait a turn, or, you know what I mean? Like, that's one that that's another rare that I've played around successfully in a draft game before. It's like, man, if this is slug, I just get completely wrecked here. And then, yeah, it turns out to be slug. So, but it's like, you could just tell, because it was like, they weren't playing Xenon, so it's like a 5-cost stealth, and so it's not a sludge. They're not growing their sludge, but it's like not being revealed, and like anything else could be attacking here, kind of thing. It's like,
What about you, Alex? Where are you at as far as the whole stealth dynamic?
I'm probably not as good as John at determining what the card is, but I'd say I'm probably about 80%. If you take rares out, right? Because you never know with the rares. But yeah, like I had just game the other day, opponent played a 5-drop stealth unit. They were in Xenon. I took a very low risk chance that my red rune would kill it. I'm like, that's probably the 4/2, or it's the 1/1 that's going to grow if I don't kill it right now. So take 2, and yeah, it was the 4/2. Opponent concedes on the spot because they're like sad that you killed their 5-drop. But
Muck crawler.
Yeah, like just you can like pretty much guess if they're in Combre, it's either the combatant or the 3/3. If they're in Skycrag, you can pretty much kill it or block it with anything that has 3 toughness, and it's going to die because all the stealths that are small, other than the 2/3 in red, it's going to turn up on its turn. Then they all turn up, like John said, on the red ones.
Turned up.
The shadow ones are small too. The 3-drops. Once you start throwing rares and get to the 5-drops, it gets a little bit harder, but it's not. It's not as stealthy as I thought it was going to be, I guess.
Yeah, and then there was the whole draft tournament with open deck, open pools where why are we even playing stealth cards? It's like
right.
That was kind of interesting. It's like one of the pillars of the format just goes out the window for the draft tournament.
Yeah, no joke, but I mean, I guess that's the fairest way to do it.
I guess. Yeah, the rares that come down on 3 are the ones that you're like, what is that? Or some of the uncommons, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one that's gotten me more than any other is definitely the fly trap.
Yeah, yep, I agree.
I think I finally have that one on my play around list. Like I had to get wrecked by that, like I think 3 times before I finally learned my lesson on that one.
I mean, it's like you said, it's so specific, right? It's a little difficult to play around, and it does cater to playstyle, right? Because in limited, if you have the flyer, that's kind of what's going to get in there, especially at the beginning of the game when the units aren't matching up correctly. So that one kind of makes the most sense, right? As far as it's going to reveal itself for natural play. You don't have to do anything special for that, right? Versus like Kako, there's a little bit of counterplay where you have to be specifically tandem attacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that guy specifically, you want it to go a couple of turns before it's revealed, just so you can really milk it getting larger. So
no, I mean it's also pretty straightforward to play around the fly trap, like at least minimize its value, right? Like if in a board stally game and you're winning in the air, all you got to do is, when they've played a 3-drop stealth unit and you're like, the fly trap would wreck me here. Well, you just attack in with just the one guy or the one that won't die when it's revealed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You just have to take. You kind of have to take that one turn off. Or if you have like shackles or something, you just don't care anyway. You just get in there. But if you don't have, if your hand is empty or whatever, and you don't have any tricks, then you can kind of play around it pretty easily.
Fair. All right, sweet guys. I think that's gonna do it. It was absolutely amazing catching up with you guys, and I definitely like that we kind of did a quick pulse check on the format, kind of talked about the highs and lows. Oh, one last thing, Detonation Cannon is still absolutely horrible. No one draft it. Leave them in the draft packs. That card is garbage. No one should play it. All right, I'm just kidding. It's still freaking great. It's just great. I love that card. It's probably one of my favorite cards in this format.
Kills Ursa Squadron, kills opponents. What more do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
We might have mentioned it briefly too, but cards that reach out and like touch a unit, those are much better than normal,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like the Shadow Path Intimidator, or like the red unit that exhausts something, just to reveal those stealth units so you are 100% sure of what it is. They're a lot better in the format.
I concur completely, my friend. Okay, but we will end it there. I just, had to talk about my homie for a second, but you guys are great. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and it was great catching up with you guys. You guys are awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Missed doing this show so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no doubt. And then, thanks to everyone out there in, I I guess, podcast land, listening to us on your drive to work or while you're doing chores and stuff. Appreciate your patience, but it's good to be back and kicking it with you guys. Not sure what our next show is going to be just yet. I guess we'll see what kind of turns up in the Eternal meta, and we'll kind of figure that out, but we'll definitely keep you guys up to date on what's going on and whatnot. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really do appreciate you. Have a great time. And of course, you can catch draft videos and stuff on YouTube, link down below, and or hang out with us live every Saturday and Sunday at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Good night.
Good luck in your draft queues, everyone.